I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to the second episode of Old on Old. This is a new series where I'm doing where each and every week I'm looking at a classic film that I personally have never seen before. So I've seen your classics like Citizen Kane and your Casablancas, but I've seen plenty of classic movies that are considered classic for a reason, and I want to go out and check out and see with a sort of 2018 viewpoint, do they hold up? What's the reason they're classics, and do I enjoy them? Because of course I can recognize some movies as classics, but maybe some movies I don't necessarily gravitate towards. So I noticed sometimes a lot of comedies back in the day. Sometimes comedy's a weird thing where it has to be generational. I like my Will Ferrells and my Jonah Hills and my Seth Rogans, but maybe sometimes when I watch older 70s comedies, they don't necessarily resonate. So that's where the reason of the series is this. I'm in this unique position where I'm seeing a lot of these classic movies for the first time. I want to give you my sort of reactions to a different one each and every week. And this, about boy oh boy, I'm glad I did this movie the second week, and this is the Treasure of the Treasure of the Sierra Madre. I always forget the in there. And this is an incredible movie. Does it hold up? Absolutely. This is a great movie and an odd pick to do this week. I'm going to get through some of the classics, big classics I've never seen, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Gone with the Wind, and Superman in the next coming episodes. But I wanted to go with this one just because I heard great things about it from Paul Thomas Anderson. He sort of released that it's one of his favorite movies. I've heard great things about it. Christopher Nolan was inspired by it on Dunkirk, and it's sort of interesting to see, looking at these classic movies, where some of your favorite movies got their inspiration, and then seeing A, do I like that movie, or B, how is it inspired? But The Treasure of Sierra Madre I was a big fan of because when I'm doing the series, and I sort of got into this series, I wanted to learn more about classic film, and this taught me a lot about it, just because I thought a classic movie was one way, and it could be so many different things. It can be like a movie today. But back in the day, the mainstream sort of movies were the Casablanca types, where they're sort of sweeping epic type, not even epic, but just sweeping romances. Maybe they're period pieces. They have sort of romanticized dialogue. There's not a lot of action, and it's sort of just like the most beautiful people in the world are up on the screen, and sort of that sort of there's a stageness to it. There are obviously backlots. They're obviously constructed. It has sort of an old timey feel, which is good. I consider Back to the Future a perfect movie, and it has that old timey feel. But this movie's different. This movie really immersed you in it. It had a different feel than other old movies I watched. Now, this movie came out in 1948, so it's not a completely old movie. It's not a 30s movie, but it's definitely old, shown in black and white. And the reason why I sort of felt that way is was explained to me after I did some research for the movie, this was one of the very first movies that was shot pretty much completely on location. It took 6 months to film, and I think it totally paid off. Sort of a leap in filmmaking history. I think it was an important time because of this ability to sort of shoot on location and see this as a viable option. Yes, it took a long time, but it proved a really incredible effect, as you can see on the screen, because when we're launched to Mexico and we see Humphrey Bogart with his tattered clothes, it feels sort of raw. It feels like an Italian neo-realist film like Bicycle Thieves or something like that, but with an American star like Humphrey Bogart. And I think that's what I really loved about the movie. Really, reason why it caught me off guard was that the sort of the grittiness and the realness of it all. As not only in terms of how the movie was composed, the photography, but also with the characters. I found Humphrey Bogart's character in particular just to be so despicable and yet so charming and likable. But really, it's the sort of overarching factor of the content, subject matter. It's not the sort of we talked about before the McCarthy Code, where you can only say certain things, and the studio heads and sort of the American public, were sort of iffy about that. Gone with the Wind, which I'll be covering next week. I used the word "damn," and that was the biggest thing. Oh my God, damn! In a public movie, you can't say that, right? So that in this movie, obviously, this is 10 years after that movie, so things have changed. But in terms of the grit, I guess just the total artistic choice to make a leap, and this is an artistic movie in every sense of the word. Yes, it's an action type blockbuster, and yes, it's entertaining, but it's so rare to see action blockbusters. I mean, I don't think we've seen sort of a really true one since maybe The Matrix, where it has sort of these deep sort of themes, underlying themes, and incredibly dense characters, where you can just take the character alone and remove the action and still be a compelling movie. And that's why I love so much about it, because aside from the action and the great parts, is that the interaction between the three men, Humphrey Bogart, Walter Houston, which is John Huston, the director, his father, and I'm forgetting the last guy. Their sort of interaction between the three is really sort of interesting, but that all comes down to me, it's Humphrey Bogart. Now, Humphrey Bogart took this role, and you have to understand, historically, this is a very risky role. Humphrey Bogart's sort of the typical Casablanca leading man, and he's taken this role of this movie. This guy is not a good man. He's morally bankrupt, but he has some sort of sense of likability and that charm that Humphrey Bogart brings to the character. I was researching about James L. Brooks, and he said he considered Jack Nicholson the greatest actor, or one of the greatest actors of all time, because of his sort of courage to take on these parts. Because Jack Nicholson, I mean, he's known for sort of being the leading type man or whatever. Not a huge box office hit, but he's Jack Nicholson. He's won, I think, an Oscar at that point, or maybe even two. And then he does Terms of Endearment, where he plays this sort of washed-up astronaut who is sort of kind of a loser nowadays. He was an astronaut, he was a hero, but his heydays are over. And that's sort of a brave thing to do. Some of my favorite Tom Cruise roles is when it sort of debunks the myth of Tom Cruise. The Mummy's bad because he's like this big action star. Yeah, I'm the best, right? But Edge of Tomorrow is fantastic because it shows how this guy is a bumbling type idiot. And he's a coward and he doesn't want to go into battle. Those are the best Tom Cruise movies because he's vulnerable. It demystifies the myth of Tom Cruise in the same way Humphrey Bogart does this with The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. He's playing a character that, because he's a protagonist, you want to like. And Humphrey Bogart is not playing this totally despicable character. Not does he even play a villain. He just plays a character who has goes through a tremendous arc. At the beginning of the film, we see him through poverty and just trying to get a job and just trying to eat, and then finally gets a job and then works his butt off and then tries to get paid and then doesn't get paid, and it's like, geez. So when you hear this prospect of gold come up, that's sort of the setting of the movie, is that these three men are looking to find gold to get out of their sort of their poor lives. And Humphrey Bogart, as soon as he hears that, he's like, I'm a great man, I want to do this. And we see these little things planted with the story, which I think John Huston does a incredible job about. There's little things that sort of hint to his different change in the end of the movie. Things like, of course, when he beats the guy up, I mean, he has his wallet and it has a bunch of bills. Incredible, obvious symbolism, but well done. He's these bills, right? And he only takes a couple of them. He's like, 300, that's all we need, right? He throws the wallet back down, takes 300, takes what he needs. And what happens? He's rewarded by it in sort of a karma sense, where he wins the lottery, and now he has the $200 enough to get to the gold. Then the other guy says, wait, the $200, but that's too much for you, where you're going to be pulling up my half. And he's like, oh, I don't care, as long as we both, get the money and do this together. And they shake hands, and then little things, how they thought the old band was crazy early on, and just really Walter Houston's monologue at the beginning sort of explains the movie, where he says, I've seen what gold does to men. It corrupts them. 10,000 turns into 20,000, turns into 50,000. They just want more and more and more. What if I just take this and then this and then this? So they're dealing with obviously getting the gold, but then also other prospects who possibly think there's gold up here and possibly think these guys have found it, and sort of the Mexican bandits that come here. Of course, there's the famous line, stinking badges. We don't want stinking badges. The great line, sort of a great shootout area, almost Western a la-esque, but not obviously extravagant. And that's what I love about it, is that there is action, but it's really what I come for is the dialogue and the interaction between the characters and the transition of this character. And we see Humphrey Bogart be corrupted by the gold, this prospect of money. He's constantly hiding his stuff. then you start seeing Humphrey Bogart talking to himself and sort of going crazy, and he's starting to be more paranoia. But because he's our protagonist, we're starting to think, wait, maybe is there a plan to like steal them? Then everyone's on nerves, and then you sort of realize that no, this guy's crazy, and then so you sort of back out and see how crazy this guy is and how his descent into madness, where you see this one guy who literally says at the beginning of the movie, "Oh, I'm not like those other men. I wouldn't do that. You know, I take what I want and I leave. I have good morals." And then totally abandons those morals through, threat of paranoia and greed and power. And there's so many interesting themes here. It's almost like Taxi Driver-esque, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, in terms of how we see this character who we want to like, we want him to succeed, but at every opportunity to do something good, he fails over and over and over again. It's almost like, I can't root for you, man. I want to, but I can't. And it's sort of this interesting dynamic as an audience that I love, because you have an unlikable protagonist, and it's so hard to write. I mean, I think Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver is one of the most interesting characters of all time. And same here, because it's so hard to create a protagonist that is a charming and you want to like, but his actions don't justify what we want, and just because he's the protagonist doesn't mean he's the hero of the story. And I think that's an interesting concept, especially looking back at the classic movies. I mean, movies have done this for a while, but this is probably, I mean, I bet one of the first, and sort of one of the riskiest. And like I said, I feel I just love the dialogue and and sort of how the story unfolds. I don't want to say the screenplay, but I would say the screenplay, just because how things intertwine and things connect with each other. And then of course that star performance from Humphrey Bogart, which I don't think he was nominated for, which is insane. I think just because the Oscars didn't like him because he was unlikable or whatever. But I thought he was incredible. Really is the heart and soul of this movie. I highly, highly recommend this movie. It's a great movie. A great action movie, so I recommend it to most people. And then just a great, but more than that, there's underlying themes. It's not all action. I mean, it's considered action now because it has action in it, but it's more about a movie about a man and sticking to his morals and how much he changes, and then the contrast between how sort of the stagnation of Walter Houston's character, who's still a kind-hearted man. So interesting, and just what gold does to people, and sort of using money as this sort of central theme of greed and power and corruption, and then paranoia and the future and the past, and poverty and wealth. And it's like there's so much going on here. I know it sounds sort of pretentious and crazy, but it's not. It's really fun. It's a great time. There's a lot to unpack, which is what I really love about it. But anyways, guys, that's The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Make sure you like the video, comment below. Do you have any other movies that you want me to see? Now it's going to be hard, you may say, oh, watch Citizen Kane. Well, I've seen Citizen Kane, but I haven't seen something like Gone with the Wind, or Superman, the 1978 Richard Donner version. So there's going to be some of those in the future. Of course, I'm going to be doing this every week, and then once a month, usually the first Sunday of the month, I'll be releasing my Masters of Controlled Chaos video, which is a full-length 30 to 40-minute video. Last month, I did Brian De Palma. It's still up on the channel. You can still check that out. Next month in April, I'm going to be doing, I'm not sure right now, but I think Paul Verhoeven, and then, a couple people in the future, so that'll be really fun. But stay tuned every week, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out any old sort of reviews or an analyst from a 2018 viewpoint, sort of looks at it from a 2018 viewpoint. But anyways, guys, I'm Connor Old, and until next time, stay tuned.